Some of you in my Discord might have already noticed that I've started releasing builds of the editor. And for a while now, I've tried to get a tutorial out, but it was really difficult because, one, the editor was just bad, and two, a lot of the things that I talked about, they were just going to be changed anyways, so it was hard to explain everything only to say, this will probably change later. But with the new build just released, it completely overhauls some of the worst parts of the editor and makes them actually good, more specifically modifying textures. It made more sense to get a video out now that the editor has improved. There's still a long way to go and improvements to be made, but I just want to quickly showcase the current version of the editor. Of course, everything shown here is subject to change, and any major changes I'll make sure to showcase them in videos like this. This video will be a brief explanation of Developer Build 5 of FCEditor. Before launching up the editor, make sure you have FutureCop installed and access to the mission files. Grab any mission file you would like to edit, or just all of them, and drag them into the mission files folder inside the editor's directory. After that, go ahead and launch up the editor. You'll be greeted with a list view on the side showing all the mission files we just added and a settings button at the bottom. Before jumping into a mission file, let's go into the settings. The editor now features customizable keybounds that can be rebound to whatever. No longer do you have to use the default controls. These settings do save, so you don't have to worry about changing them every single time you launch up the editor. Going back, to open up the level editor, we simply just click on one of these list items. I'll be opening up MP or LA Cantina. After clicking on the file, we have some quick additional settings. This check mark right here means it will completely flatten the entire map. That way we can build an entirely new map without having to manually tear down an existing one. The width and height is referring to the width and height of sections the map will have. And basically a section is just a 16 by 16 tile area, but I'll explain more on that in a second here. For now, I just want to open up the original map. Now that we're loaded in, I'll turn on free look by hitting the middle mouse button, or whatever you bound it to. WASD is to move around, space and control is to go up and down, and Q and E is to go up and down relative to the camera. On the left here are all the edit modes. The default edit mode is Geometry Edit Mode, this top icon right here, but clicking any of these will change the edit mode that you're in. There's also some keybinds to quickly change what edit mode that you're in, and those can be found in the settings. The default edit mode, Geometry Edit Mode, is for modifying the game's height map and vertices on tiles. Before I do anything, I just want to quickly select a tile, and how I do that is by looking and clicking. Now, it looks like a lot just happened, but I'll break it down. This green border is the border of a section. The tile that we just clicked on is now highlighted green, and each corner of this grid space shows the vertices that this tile can connect to. A tile is essentially just a face that connects to these vertices. These vertices are the game's height map. A section is 16 by 16 tiles and 17 by 3 by 17 vertices. There are only 3 vertices in each corner of the grid space, and vertices are shared between tiles. These single vertices are called channels, and their order is represented by their color. Blue is the first channel, green is the second channel, and red is the last channel. The first channel is generally used to create floors, while the green and red are used to create walls and other shapes. There are multiple ways of moving these channels. The first way is by simply just clicking and dragging, and you'll notice when I do click and drag that the tiles next to it move along with it. Another method is by right-clicking, we can set an exact Y value. Because this game is, well, old, the Y value isn't a floating point number or even just a normal integer. The value is an 8-bit signed integer. If you know what that means, great. If not, just know that the maximum value is 127 and the minimum value is negative 128. We can select multiple channels by holding Shift and clicking. The channel will turn white once it is selected. Selected channels will move along with other selected channels, but only if that channel itself is selected. This also applies to setting the height. If multiple channels are selected, the Y value will always show the value of the channel that was just right-clicked on. This can be helpful with getting things to line up. We can select all channels in the corner of a grid space by holding the number representing the order it's in and clicking. For example, holding 1 will select all the first channels, 2 the second, and 3 the last. To select all heights of a specific channel, hold Shift, Alt, and click on that channel. Since we just clicked on the first channel, all first channels are now selected. To clear selected items, hit C. This will first unselect channels, and then it'll unselect everything else. Moving on from vertices and channels, we have tiles. Now, like described earlier, a tile is just a face that connects to these vertices in a grid. There are a couple ways to change which channel a tile is connected to. At the top, there are two buttons. One is for shifting the channels the tile is connected to up, and the other one is down. This can be useful for creating tops of walls, as you can quickly just change the channels the tile is connected to up or down. Another method is by changing the channel of a single corner. The implementation of this I don't like very much, so it is going to change. With the tile selected, if we scroll over a channel, the corner of the selected tile will change. Scrolling up will move the corner up a channel, down will move it down. Something to note, this is the ordering of the channels and not their actual height. Now you might have noticed that when we did change a single corner, that the tile's overlay lit up red. That is because of a really unfortunate compression that FutureCop does. FutureCop can only have 110 different faces. If your tile's face does not fit within that 110 combination, it can't compress. What this red overlay is telling us is that the file can't compress because of this combination. Now, if I move the other corner, it will light up green again, indicating that this face does exist within the 110 different combinations. There are ways to work around this, and most of the time it involves using a triangle tile instead of a quad tile. This brings us to our next edit mode that we have, and this is Geometry Add mode. This mode will allow us to create new tiles and start building an actual level. It's recommended if you are building a custom level to make the height map first before adding tiles. This mode is pretty straightforward with its implementation. At the top there's a category for different tile presets, and to the right of that are actual tile presets. The preset icon will show the shape of the tile and the channels it's connected to in each corner. To build something, say a wall, I would just go to the wall category and click on a preset. Once I've selected a preset, there will be an overlay previewing the position of the tile. To add the tile, all I need to do is just click and there we go. If you're looking for a specific tile and can't find it in the presets, you might need to find something that's close to it and then do a single vertex change in the geometry edit mode. The implementation of editing the height map and such is a little old, so it's not super great, but for now it works, and of course this will improve later on. But moving on to our next edit mode is section edit mode. This mode helps in making the layout of our level, especially in symmetrical maps. If we click on the level, then we can select a section. Like with Geometry Edit mode, it shows the border of the selected section. The first button is for copying a section, and the next one is to paste a section. So real quick, let's grab a section, copy it, and then paste it here. Before we can paste it, it gives us a warning. Click OK, and there we go, we just copied a section over. The remaining buttons are for mirroring our sections in various ways. Again, super useful for making precinct assault levels. We have buttons for mirroring the sections vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. Something to note is when mirroring a section, it doesn't change the tile's textures. The tile's UVs remain the same. Some tiles might be removed if they don't have a valid mesh. That's really all there is to talk about in section edit mode. But moving on is the mode I'm most excited to talk about. Texture edit mode is a new mode added to the editor. Before, modifying textures was confusing and simply put just bad, but now it's a lot better with this mode. Before we do anything in this mode, let's first select a tile. Like with Geometry Edit mode, we just click on a tile to select it. Now that we selected a tile, you'll notice this big window that just popped up. This is the UV mapper, and this is how we can change the UVs and texture our tile uses. On the texture, there will be dots representing the UVs and lines connecting them. Like with the height map, the color represents the order that they're in. We can zoom in on the texture by scrolling, and we can also move the texture around by right-clicking and dragging. To move UVs around, all you need to do is click and drag on a point. The tile's texture will update real time as you change the texture in the mapper. There are some tools on the side for making mapping textures easier. There are two rotate tools, which will rotate the UVs either clockwise or counterclockwise, and two more tools for flipping the order either vertically or horizontally. At the top of the mapper, there's a drop-down. FutureCop stores 10 of these 256 by 256 bitmaps. You can change which bitmap the tile uses with this drop-down. You can also export the bitmap to modify the bitmap's textures. Clicking on the Export Texture button will bring up a window to save the file. The file will be saved in the Textures folder located in the same directory as the editor. Once the texture has been saved, you can re-import the texture by hitting the Import Texture button. That same file selector will open up again. FutureComp's textures are 256 by 256 bitmaps, and their format is X1, R5, G5, B5. Once you're finished, click Done to close the mapper. In texture edit mode, there are a couple tools at the top that we can use. The first one is to duplicate a tile's texture. If I select two tiles and hit this button, you'll notice that the last tile I selected changed its texture to the first one that I selected. If I select a bunch of tiles and duplicate textures, it duplicates textures on the first one that I selected. Anytime you're working with multiple tiles, it always shows the data on the first selected tile. The next tool is to open up the UV mapper. The checkmark on the right is for opening up the UV mapper when I click on a tile. Unchecking this will cause the UV mapper to not open up when I click on the tile. Like described, if I select a bunch of tiles and then open up the UV mapper will show the texture data of the first tile that I've selected. To clear all selected items, click C. Selecting tiles is pretty much the same as geometry edit mode with a few differences. A range of tiles can be selected by holding Shift-Alt and click from one corner to another. Something important to note is that you can only select tiles that have the same shape, meaning that you can only select a group of quad tiles or a group of triangle tiles. If I select a square tile, I'm unable to multi-select a triangle tile and vice versa. Moving on, you might have noticed this new side panel here on the right. This is for texture presets. You can save textures and quickly apply them to other tiles. Texture presets can be saved and they have their own file format. What this means is you can create presets to be used in later levels or by other people to make texture mapping even easier. Let's first save a preset. First select a tile and hit Add Texture Preset. When hitting the button, it adds an item to this list that shows a preview of the texture and then asks for a name. After naming the preset, you can hit Enter or click out to save the preset. Now that we have a preset, if I select a tile and click the preset, that tile's texture will now change to that preset. Not only can I make presets, but I can also make folders to better organize my presets. Like with presets, if I click on the folder, it will ask for a name. Once the folder is created, I can open it up by clicking. Now that I'm no longer in the root folder, I have this back button to go back a folder. You can save presets in this folder, and you can even add more folders to this folder. If you mess up on a name, you can right-click on the item and rename it. You can also delete presets and other folders. Once you're ready to save the preset, hit the Save button. Like with exporting textures, a save window will pop up. This will save the file in the Texture Presets folder in the Editors directory. Next time you launch up the editor, you can open up a texture preset file by hitting the Open Presets button, and then selecting a file. And that's pretty much it. No need to worry about any compression or sharing textures like before. All of that is done on the back end. It's finally time to move on from modeling and touch on other aspects of the levels. Unfortunately, there is still a lot of unknowns with FutureComp's objects, and there aren't a lot of features when it comes to editing those objects. However, what I have found seems super cool, and I can't wait until the editor can fully modify objects. But until then, this is what is currently implemented in the editor. I'll touch on the navigation mesh here in a second, but for now, I just want to open up the actor editing mode. FutureComp calls its objects actors, and that's what I'll be calling them in this video. When clicking the actor edit mode, it will display all actors on the level. The editor will do its best to display the model on the actor. If it can't parse the model or an actor doesn't have a model, a white cube will take its place. When clicking on an actor, an axis mover will appear underneath the actor. This means the actor is selected. We can move an actor around by using this half-implemented axis mover, or the better option is just to hold Shift and the actor will move to your cursor. On some actors, we can rotate the facing. If you hold down R and move the mouse, the direction of the actor will move with the mouse. You can also delete a selected actor just by hitting delete. There is only one tool in actor edit mode, and that's related to the navigation mesh, which I'll touch here in a second. But other than that, that's really all there is to actor edit mode as of right now. When making a custom level, I just kinda have to guess what actors do. For example, I can safely assume that this white cube in front of this static actor is for spawning blue tanks, and that this big clump of cubes right here in the blue base has something to do with blue base scripting. It can be trial and error to figure out which actors trigger what, and this is why the editor builds are still called developer builds. The navigation mesh is a little bit more implemented than actors, but there's still a little few things off with it. Opening up navigation edit mode will now display the level's navigation mesh. A white circle represents a nav node, and there are lines that connect from one node to the next. Like with actors, I can click on a nav node to select it. The axis mover will then display, but I can also move it around by holding shift. There are a couple tools in nav edit mode we can use. Clicking the plus will add a new nav node that will follow our cursor until we click, which will then add the nav node to the mesh. To create a path from one node to another, right-click on the starting node and click on the ending node. A node can have a maximum of 3 different paths to other nodes. How the pathing works is a little confusing and the editor's visuals don't help a ton, but a node works off of indexes. What that means is when I click on a starting node and attach it to this ending node, what I'm saying is when an actor gets to this node, the next node is this one. It can't go back on itself because the node doesn't have an index back to the starting node, though if I add an index to this node, then it will. If a node has multiple paths, the actor will randomly pick between them. To remove a path, select the node and click the Clear All Next Node Paths button. This will remove the path to the next node, not what is previously pathed to this node. Completely custom nav meshes can be made in this mode, and if you would like to clear the existing nav mesh, hit the clear button in the top right. However, there is one very important thing with nav meshes. In order for an actor to spawn and use the nav mesh, it needs to have a starting node, and that node's position needs to be the exact same as the position the actor's in. Luckily, there are tools for doing this. The checkbox right of the Clear Paths tool is to set the node as a starting node. Left of the clear button is a button for copying the nav node's coordinates. Once we've copied the node's position, let's go back to the actor edit mode. The one tool that we have in actor edit mode is for pasting the position on an actor. Let's grab the blue tank object and move it to the position. First I select the blue tank and then I hit the paste button. And there we go. The actor moved to the nav node's position, that way the tank will be able to spawn and path. Going back to navigation edit mode, there is one last thing. Future Cop levels store multiple nav meshes for different kind of actors. For Precinct Assault missions, there are pretty much always 2. One nav mesh for blue tanks and one for red tanks. You can switch these nav meshes by simply clicking on the numbered button. And that pretty much wraps up everything. The last thing we would do is to save, and that's by hitting F5. Once we do, it brings up a save file window. This file will go into the output folder. Like I said, this was a brief overview of the editor, and it's still pretty early in development. With each major change, I'll be showcasing them in a video like this one. If you'd like to keep up to date with anything that happens to the editor, or anything related to Future Cop, consider joining the Discord link below. Thank you for watching and following the project, and see you whenever I make a video again.